Welcome aboard for part two of the A game tonight. I'm Rob Acampora as we're getting into what should have been March Madness, but you've been hearing the term March Sadness a lot over the last few days. It has been probably the most bizarre of times in the world of sports, and it has affected a lot of people, including my current guest who's chiming in via, well, let's say video chat at this point. The voice of Seton Hall Basketball for 17, 18 years. He's done Seton Hall Basketball, Seton Hall Baseball. He's been on television on the CBS Sports Network. And yes, his life has been affected by the coronavirus, but I'm very happy that Dave Popkin taking some time out, bringing his A game. Dave, thanks so much for calling in.
Hey, Rob, good to talk to you. And at least I'm healthy and hoping everybody else is as well. It's a crazy time for sure.
Absolutely. And this should have been, in a lot of levels, I think possibly the best team you've been able to cover for Seton Hall. I mean, this team had the potential, I think, to maybe make the Final Four because you know from watching basketball, when you have a star player, they can put that team on his back and usually make that ride. You got Miles Powell, the Big East Player of the Year. It just seemed like everything was kind of lining up really well for Seton Hall, and then, of course, the shutdown.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is their best team since 1993.
Going back to PJ Carlesimo's teams,
all the
yeah.
pieces.
Yeah.
You know, that was a team that won both the Big East regular season and the Big East championship by a wide margin against Syracuse. And they had Jerry Walker, Terry DeHare. And this team had a lot of similar pieces. Romaro Gill in the middle was making big strides. Quincy McKnight, Jared Roden. They had a lot of different pieces. Even Shavar Reynolds, a guy from down the shore, from Manchester Township, had become important, playing like 20-something minutes a game, defense, and a couple three-pointers. So they had a good coach. They had some decent depth. They could have lost in the first round. They could have won it all. I'm not sure, but we'll never know.
Yeah, that's the hard part of this whole thing. I mean, going into the Big East tournament, you kind of had this feeling of like, well, which way could this go? And let me ask you, were you around when the decision was going down? Because there I was actually watching St. John's and Creighton play their game, and then all of a sudden they're not coming back out, and you understand what happened. But I also feel that maybe the commissioner was taking maybe too much flack. They were doing the best they can under the circumstances. Would you agree?
I agree. I mean, I think that when the commissioner spoke with all the other conference commissioners and the NCAA at 10 a.m. that day, there wasn't talk of canceling the tournaments at that point. And then within the next 2.5 hours, it was like a domino effect where, you know, the Big Ten and the ACC and all these conferences were canceling. And she was kind of caught unawares. And Val Ackerman decided at halftime, you know, we can't do this anymore. They probably could have played the rest of that game. They're there anyway. But beyond that, people were starting to shut down colleges. They were shutting down all kinds of things across the country. And it didn't make sense from a public health standpoint.
Right.
I was just sitting on my couch watching that game, getting ready for my game that night against Marquette, just doing some final, you know, notes and tune-ups for that. But it's like the game that never happened.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough thing, especially when you look at the run Kevin Willard, you talk about the head coach, 5 consecutive 20-win seasons, really has gotten this team to a level, like you said, we can only compare it to what PJ Carlesimo did in the early 90s. And I'm going to bring up something that has been kicked around. If they decide to give these senior players potentially another year, we can't expect Miles Powell to come back. He's probably a top 5 pick in the coming NBA draft. But you talk about Romano Gill, 7'2" center, great shot blocker, game improved as the season went on. Quincy McKnight as a point guard, developing more, averaging about 6 assists a game, but more toward the second half of the season. If those two components could come back, could we talk about Seton Hall maybe being that team that could continue to win, talk about the Big East title, and a significant run in the tournament?
If those two guys came back, yes. I think that they're deep enough. And they proved when Miles went out and they beat Maryland without him, and Anthony Nelson stepped up and played well. Sandro Mamukelashvili is supposed to be back next year. He might be a first-team All-Big East player in the preseason. He is an NBA talent. I think he's maybe the most talented player on the team. I think Miles Powell will be, a late first, early second-round pick. I think he'll be on a team next year. But the other guys, they're older. Romaro Gill's 25 years old.
No, a lot of people don't know that. It's a very good point. Yeah,
23 years old. So I think these guys might be ready to move on with their lives. I think if anybody, it would make the most sense for Romaro to come back because he has not played a lot of basketball. Right. He hasn't started playing since he was 19. That's the first time that he played on a real team. So if he had one more year to develop in the Big East, he could really increase his NBA stock and help this team go far in the NCAA tournament, but he might just be too old.
Right. So you would project a guy like him to maybe have to start in that G League and try to develop a little bit more, because it seems to me at this level, if he's got to go to the NBA, it's develop through the league, maybe become a really good 12 to 16-minute backup center who can give you good defense.
Yeah, no, I think that's the case. And I think we're not really sure what he can be because he's developed so quickly. He could really be a dominant player in the pros, but he just needs to play more. So whether that's overseas, in one of the better leagues, maybe he plays in Italy or Spain or Greece or something like that, Germany, or if he plays in the G League for less money, but closer to some people that he knows. I think either way is good for him. He just needs to play. I don't think he's going to play in the NBA next year. Right. He was invited to Portsmouth.
Oh, that's
the Portsmouth Invitational Camp. So was Quincy McKnight, but now Portsmouth has been canceled. So that's another lost opportunity for those guys to showcase themselves.
Dave Popkin is the voice of Seton Hall Sports. He is here bringing his A game. When you look back on the Big East season, let's play it out a little bit. If there was a tournament, 4 were definitely in. Creighton was in, Villanova was in, Seton Hall I had in. I had Providence in. Providence seems to be peaking at the right time. Then I had Butler in. Then the bubble to me was Marquette and Xavier. I mean, I don't know if both would have made it. What would you have had? 5, 6, or 7 teams from the Big East in the tournament in your mind?
I think 7 deserved to be in. I think they probably would have put 6 in. Xavier losing their last couple of games, including to DePaul, probably hurt them. Marquette faltered a lot down the stretch, but they had so many big wins early in the season and 18 wins overall that I think they probably would have gotten in. So I'll say 6, from the Big East, which is, it would have been the highest percentage of any conference. To get 60% of your teams in would be pretty good. And it was a deep league top to bottom. Right. St. John's was a problem. They beat Creighton late. DePaul, obviously, was a problem. They beat a couple teams late. So this was the deepest the league has been since they reconfigured.
That's high praise for a league that continues to be, as I like to say, when you talk about in football, it's more of the the Big 5 or the Big 6 conferences. In basketball, it's 7. You got to put Big East amongst the other 6 big conferences without question.
No, absolutely. And I think this year they were the second, maybe third best conference. They were right up there with the Big 12. They dominated the Big 12 in non-conference play. I think they were 11-2 against the Big 12. And even though they had Kansas and they had Baylor, the Big East was deeper from top to bottom. I think the Big East was even deeper than the Big 10, which might have gotten 8 or 9 teams in this year. That's an argument there, but they were certainly better than the ACC. They were better than the Pac-12. So it was a good year for the Big East.
It's funny. You mentioned the Big 10. I had written that down. You had 8 or 9. I could see potentially 10. I don't know if the committee would have had the guts to go 10. But again, a lot of things would have had to play. There could have been an upset if the Big 10 tournament happened. But as I'm running it down, Wisconsin, Maryland, Indiana, Michigan State, Iowa, Illinois, Penn State, Rutgers, Ohio State, Michigan. Now, those 10, you could make an argument for 1 or 2, but it would have been possible that all 10 could have made it. Would have been a great story if Rutgers could have made it for New Jersey. 2 great schools getting the opportunity to potentially, how about a rematch of that great game earlier this year, which may have been, in a weird way, Seton Hall's most disappointing loss of the season.
It was their worst loss. Loss in the Oregon game early in the season in the Bahamas, that was a tough one because they were up by 19 points, and Oregon was like top 5 in the net at that time. It would have been a huge win, but they didn't play that well, and Quincy McKnight was hurt in the second half. He didn't play down the stretch, and they were rudderless without him. I think later in the year, maybe they win that game because they figured out how to close games. No matter who played for Seton Hall the day of the Rutgers game, they were going to lose. Rutgers just blitzed them. They were down 20, 25 points before you could say, Bob Wenzel. It had been a long time since Rutgers had been to the tournament, and frankly, I feel bad for them because they would have made it this year as a decent seed. I think they would have been like a 9 seed, something like that, and had a decent chance to move on.
You're talking about 2 Jersey guys here, so we would have been excited to see not only Seton Hall, because, you've been doing the job there for Seton Hall for so long, but you're also alumni of Monmouth, and Monmouth would have had an interesting potential in that Metro Atlantic tournament because I really think everybody's so bunched up in that league. There's almost like, okay, there's 3/4 mediocrity. There was 1 or 2 that stood out, but anybody could have beaten anybody in that tournament. That's why I said I would have given Monmouth any chance to maybe win the tournament, and you would have had 3 teams from Jersey in it, but we'll never know, unfortunately.
Yeah, it could have been 4 if Princeton would have made it to the Ivy League tournament, but they were the first tournament to cancel.
Right.
Monmouth, St. Peter's, I think, had maybe even a better chance.
No, very good point.
Because
Yeah.
they beat Iona, and they were looking pretty strong. They finished in second place, so that's a Jersey team there.
Mm-hmm.
Ryder was in the mix. That's another Jersey team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a New Jersey team could have come out of the MAC this year. It's really a shame because this was a banner year for basketball in New Jersey, in New York. With Miles Powell, who was a fantastic kid. I mean, I feel really bad for him. They didn't get to showcase his skills and show everybody at a national level, what he can do.
Dave, you talk about the area, New York, New Jersey area. Of course, there was big news with Rick Pitino. You mentioned Iona taking over the program there. What was your reaction when you heard that one?
It was exciting. I mean, I'm a Pitino fan.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he was guilty or not at Louisville, but it's plausible that he was not guilty. And he had to go to Greece to keep coaching and prove himself, and he won the championship there last year. And I know a lot of the guys that have coached under him love him, like Kevin Willard. And for him to come back to New York, where he is from and where he coached the Knicks and all that stuff, I think is exciting for the school, for the league. I don't see many negatives to it. He's a great coach, Hall of Fame coach, obviously, and I thought it was pretty cool.
Dave, I want to shift gears with you for a second because you've also done Seton Hall Baseball. I mean, this has sort of got to be bizarre in your position. You would have been covering the Big East tournament. You would have been covering the NCAA tournament. You would have been probably on CBS Sports doing the tournament known as CIT, which is the third tournament or the fourth tournament, depending on how you want to look at it for basketball. Then you would have had Seton Hall Baseball. I mean, this is probably in one way the busiest time of your year, and now here you are at home. I mean, I'm sure you're handling this like everybody else, kind of just waiting and see, doing the safe thing. But does it feel bizarre to kind of be like, this is my busy time of year. This is where I'm jumping around, literally figuring I got to be at three places at once.
Yeah, no, it is. It's definitely strange. I'm not used to being home in March, but the first day was very depressing. That day when the Big East tournament was canceled, and then they canceled the NCAA tournament, and it just sinks in that, I mean, not only am I personally missing games and money and all that stuff, but for the kids, that have fought their whole lives, in some of their cases, they're 23, 24, 25 years old, and this is going to be the big moment of their life.
Right.
I was sad for them. And then after that, you move on and you live your life. And I also have a business where I do marketing and events, and that's crazy now because we're moving all the events, right? You can't have big public events. So that's been busy, and I work from home anyway. So it's not a huge adjustment, but I miss the games. I miss the prep, and I miss the creative part. Like this, like with you, it's a good creative outlet where you let it flow, right? You think on your feet, and that's the fun part of it for me.
Dave Popkin and our paths nearly crossed a couple of times in our careers. It's interesting because he worked for the cable outlet right around 2000 and the 2000s called CN8, which was a regional cable broadcast. For a year, I was on Your Morning on CN8 every month as the musical correspondent. And God bless Kevin Walsh for giving me that opportunity. And Dave and our paths, it's like same company, never crossed. And then in the 90s, David graduated from Monmouth University. You actually did Monmouth University football for a while. The first season.
Well, I graduated from Miami, but then went right to Monmouth to call the games.
Okay, so you did the games at Monmouth. And we missed each other by a year. I did 1 year. The next year, Dave's doing the games. It's just like every time. The near misses of our lives in Jersey. It's funny how that worked out. But it's interesting. A lot of people don't realize, to get to the level you're at, you had to do the barnstorming. You went from the University of Miami, did Monmouth. And not only did you do Monmouth, you were in Iowa for a while doing minor league baseball. I mean, you were willing to kind of hone the craft, and you knew what the road was. That's not an easy road.
No, and that's why I did it. The first year in Sioux City, Iowa, I knew that I would get to host an hour-long general interest sports talk show on the big AM station in town, and then do the pregame show, do the game, do the postgame show. So I'd be on the air 5 hours every night,
right?
And the people there cared. So it was a great exercise for me, learning how to speak for that amount of time, to do prep, to book guests, like all of it. There's in this business, there's no excuse for reps. So I got to do that for 3 summers, and then went to a different city in Iowa, Des Moines, went to a bigger market, El Paso, and kind of kept moving up the ladder that way. And in baseball, that's, unless you're like the son of a famous broadcaster or something like that, that's the only way to do it. You have to get in there and show it. and have good tapes and just go for it. So that helped build my career.
And I know what you were probably getting paid because I'll give you a story. There was a point in my life where Mike Lonergan, who was the head coach at that point at the University of Vermont, brings
Yep.
me up. I'm doing an interview. It would have been a chance to do the play-by-play for Vermont basketball, but on the side I would have had to do the Lake Monsters minor league baseball team. Now, mind you, this is at least 10 years ago. Now, both jobs, no benefits, $24,000 a year. And I'm somebody in radio who's making more than that. I'm going, oh, this is different. Because you're like, here is something that's being served to you, and it's something you've always wanted to do, and you're actually going to take a pay. And I couldn't take the pay cut. I mean, I do regret it a little bit, but my point being, I know that in the 90s when you were doing this, you were doing it for peanuts. You were literally, I mean, this man's probably living on ramen noodles 5 nights a week for sure.
We had 4 guys in a 2-bedroom apartment in Nebraska, and we commuted over the bridge to Sioux City, Iowa. I made $700 a month.
Oh, wow. Oh, you know what? More power to you, because not everybody survives that whole early on. I like to say audition, because it's like you're going through the ranks. And with minor league baseball, that was what you did. You went from, the A region to the AA. You got to AAA in Buffalo. I mean, once you got to Buffalo, was that feeling like, I really got a shot of really going someplace with this? Did you feel that?
I still feel that. I feel like at some point, I'm in my 40s, and I feel like I'm getting better every year. It's not like being an athlete where they say, okay, this guy's got a bum knee, or he's lost 10 miles an hour off his fastball. In this business, until you lose your marbles, you keep getting better every year, in my opinion. I mean, if you're really trying. So I feel like I keep getting better. So whether it's the NBA or Major League Baseball or some kind of a network, I feel like there are more opportunities in my future, and I just have to keep chugging.
And I think it really helps now, and you got to agree with this, Dave. There's so many sports outlets between Fox Sports 1, the CBS Sports Network. We've got the NBC Sports Network, and everybody's trying to carve their niche in one way, shape, or form with some sport. I see with the NBC Sports Network, they got the European soccer. You look at CBS Sports Network, it's about the smaller conferences when it comes to sports. So it seems like if you can find your niche, like you do in the CIT in the past, it leads you to maybe having the opportunity to have more on the television side.
Yeah, I think so. It's just more exposure, and I do those Northeast Conference games on CBS Sports Network as well, and that's been good exposure, because then when I go into a Big East gym, somebody's like, "Oh, I saw you on TV last night. You did X and Y. How'd you get from Merrimack to Philadelphia in one day?" That kind of thing. So it's cumulative. It really is. It's just the more people that can see you, the more executives that see you. But it's like being a musician or an actor or anything. It's out there, and it's just timing.
You mentioned Merrimack. One side note before I get into random shots. Merrimack is a school that, if you don't know, won the Northeast Conference tournament, won the regular season title of the Northeast Conference. We're not allowed to play the tournament because there's a rule that says you have to sit out 4 years before you're even eligible. They made the transition. It was an historic season. I mean, did you get to see Merrimack enough to know that they should have had the chance? Is this rule really just passé?
I don't like the rule. I think the rule has partly to do with academics, because a lot of times D2 teams can let kids into school that wouldn't meet Division I qualifications, testing and credits and things like that. So to have a team full of D2 players and then let them into D1 all of a sudden, you could get some renegade school that goes and wins 20 or 25 games in D1 just because they have kids that aren't supposed to be there. So I think that's the reasoning behind it. And a lot of these schools, it does take them a while to ramp up. Like, this was by far the quickest transition ever from like decent D2 team to pretty good Division I team. They set the record for most wins 1 year to the next, from Division II to Division I. And they did it with a funky style. I saw them a couple times. I had them on TV twice. Joe Gallo is a guy from New Jersey, actually, from Milltown, I think.
Hey, another Jersey guy. Jersey represented here. I love it.
He had 5 players from New Jersey, 3 of them from St. Anthony's, and they were tough kids, and they were winners. Bob Hurley actually came to one of the games at FDU that we did. So they were great, and they played a zone. It was like they slowed it down. They were different from every other team, so they were a tough scout. And I think that he's really a coach on the move, Joe Gallo.
That's a name to keep in mind. There's some interesting openings that are still going to be out there. I look at a James Madison as a potential. They would not be. Let me say it this way. They would be smart to maybe give Gallo a call. Not that he would leave Merrimack for James Madison, but JMU should at least make that call.
Yeah, I would think, anybody at that level,
Yes.
because he's like one of these guys that can, take my players and beat you, take your players and beat me. Like, it doesn't matter who his players are. Like,
Right.
his players, he did not have a big team. He did
Hmm.
not have a particularly fast team. He had a good style. He's a
Right.
good coach. He had a good point guard that was a nice assist man that had some steals. Um, Beyond that, I mean, they didn't have first team all league players. So I think that he could coach anywhere.
Dave Popkin is the voice of Seton Hall Sports. He's bringing his A game here. We're going to do some random shots to wrap up. I say cheers to you for coming on. I brought the Jamesons for St. Patrick's Day. Do you got a Guinness in hand?
Have one for me. No, I had one last night.
All right, okay. Well,
I
I'll have
jumped the
one.
gun.
Yeah. All right. Oh, okay. I shouldn't have done that. All right. As I fire one ready, you've done just so many different sports. Do you have a favorite? Do you like to do play-by-play on?
I would say no.
Very
baseball's
diplomatic
my
of you, sir.
Baseball's my first love. The thing that I think I'm probably best at now is basketball on the radio. So I like that.
I mean, forgive the tangent because it makes me think, does college baseball get enough exposure?
Oh, college baseball doesn't. I mean, especially like the top 25 teams.
Yeah.
That's as good as double or triple A ball. It's a lot of good players, a lot of good prospects, and I love doing Miami baseball. That was one of my favorite things that I've done.
Wow, that's saying something.
College World Series.
Amen. And that's when I really ramp up. I mean, to watch what goes on in Omaha is a blast. That's on my list. I'd like to go to Omaha and actually check it out live at some point.
It's cool.
When you talk about Kevin Willard, I mean, I don't see him going to the NBA. But with the Brooklyn Nets kicking around Jason Kidd and Tyrone Lue, the former Cavaliers coach, and kicking around Mark Jackson, would Kevin Willard be good at the NBA level? We've seen some college coaches just absolutely crap out in the NBA and not get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good X's and O's coach. He was with the Celtics under Pitino as basically a scout and a video guy. So he's been in the league. He watches NBA almost every night. He gets a lot of his plays from there. I don't think he wants that. I think he wants to stay at Seton Hall. His wife and kids like it where they are. If it's the Nets or the Knicks, maybe that's a different story because he's close to home. But I think that unfortunately, he might need a couple of years of a deep run, in the NCAA tournament for people to say, yep, that's our guy. But could he do it? Absolutely. He's a fantastic coach.
Well said. You're a Jersey guy, as we know, so we live in the diner capital of the world. Give me your favorite diner in Jersey.
It's actually closed right now for renovations. Tops in East Newark.
I haven't been there. I've heard about this. Really good, huh?
Oh, it's great. I mean, the TikTok has recently turned over. They were very good, but it's new now. It's a little fancy for my taste. Tops is the best.
Yeah, I like your style. Like, you want that diner to be a little dingy,
Yep.
Now on the road, it's a different story. You're not gonna. But do you have a favorite stop when you're traveling on the road? You go, all right, I'm in this town. I got to hit this place. What stands out?
Buddy Guys in Chicago.
Ooh, nice.
I know you're a huge music guy
Yes.
like me. I saw Buddy Guy in Buddy Guys twice.
Oh, get out of here. Okay,
Yeah, right in front.
I was about to say, is that like a religious experience at that point?
Completely, and the food is good too. It's like Southern food, collard greens, all that. I loved it.
Can I just say I hate you right now, just so I? All right, one last one. And if you could be anywhere to be celebrating St. Patrick's Day, I mean, are you happy where you are? Would you like to be out? I mean, what would be a normal St. Patrick's Day for you?
One of the most memorable St. Patrick's Days for me is that I saw Van Morrison at the Supper Club in New York. That was pretty cool.
Between Buddy Guy and Van, I really hate you right now, Dave. I really do. Oh my God!
I'm perfectly happy.
Absolutely. Obviously, you can go to Dave's website, DavePopkin.com, and find out more about what he does on the side right now. Because right now he's available for a lot of things because a lot of things have been shelved, unfortunately. And thank you so much for giving me the time. Next time, hopefully in a couple months, we get you down to the Shared Universe Studios. We do this one-on-one.
That'd be great. I appreciate it. Good talking with you.
Good talking with you, too. That's Dave Popkin, the voice of Seton Hall Basketball, Seton Hall Baseball. That's a wrap for the A game tonight. It is a little bit of March sadness, but let's understand something. This is being done for all of our health and for all our good. When we come out of this, may we become more loving, stronger, and above all, more resilient. Cheers to you. May the luck of the Irish be with you, and I'll talk to you again soon. Peace.